Great. So can I invite everyone on to the panel? Tanguy, James, Larissa, Casper. I'll have just one minute. Okay. Great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm the imposter. Does it work? Does it work? Hmm.
So great. Thank you all for joining us. Would you mind maybe introducing yourself quickly and telling us, what your role is and
For sure.
yeah. Go ahead.
I'm James Allison. So I am Director of Market Development for Europe for a company called Advertimer. Advertimer are specialists in-store ad tech. So we're kind of revolutionizing what's happening in-store and bridging the gap between standards, metrics, audience measurement, online and in-store.
Okay.
Hi, Larissa Dumitru, Head of E-commerce EMEA at Group Nexus. I am responsible for driving the commerce proposition across EMEA for our clients. And obviously, one part of my job is standards and governance. So really excited to be here today.
Hello everyone. So my name is Tanguy. I am part of Retail, the alliance of retailers that Daniel mentioned before. I am also part of Alliance Digital. I am leading the efforts in France about standardization, measurement, mapping of retail media activity in France. So in addition to what I am doing as retail partnership lead in foreign retail, I am also taking care of some work that are very linked to what IAB Europe is doing. And by the way, tomorrow I will be in Paris doing the same type of topics with the French ecosystem.
Nice. My name is Casper van Wandelen. Very Dutch name, but a bit hard to pronounce maybe. So I'm retail media lead for the Benelux for Unilever. So we have 5 different categories. So I'm overarching responsible across all categories, across all our 13 retail media retailers at the moment. So happy to join as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So maybe a question let's start with Tanguy, since you're doing some work on that. Why do you think this work is important? And what do you think the benefit is for the industry overall?
Yes, so if I start, I think the market has expanded quite well in the last years, both on retailer side, but also on brand side. And when you are a market which is evolving quite fast and growing quite fast, it's just important to make some common knowledge about it, to define the keywords, to define the KPIs that we are using, and also to have some standards, being able to share and to compare. I'm quite sure that, from a retailer standpoint, it's important to be able to give the data, to be able to compare. And I guess on the retail side, also for the brands that are working with us, it's very important to give to brands the ability to compare. And I guess that's where has some similar ideas.
Yeah, no, so I think that's for us one of the most important ones. In the end, we can only invest our Euro ones, of course. And I think that's why for us it's important that we can compare it fairly between our retailers. And I think that's now sometimes a little bit of some are in the room as well, but it is a little bit of a Wild West sometimes still. We have a lot of different ways of reporting. Everybody has a different view on the attribution window, for example. We had a lot of discussions on this. And I think for us, it's very hard sometimes to determine, okay, but where's my Euro now working the most efficient? And I think having that standardization will create a sort of solid base for us to move on to. And I think it will also have a lot of discussions now still about basics and about other things, but I would like to work more on innovation, joint test and learn and other things. But I think for now with that base that is not there yet, we first need to focus on that. So I think it will also help a bit changing the retailer relationships afterwards.
Yeah, I think Casper is spot on. Retail media is still a bit of a wild west at times. So I still remember a case we had for a search placement for a client, a return on ad spend of 16 for a CPG product. So the client was like, well, it's easy. We're just going to spend all that money on that retailer, right? And then when we looked into it, it wasn't even a halo attribution. The attribution took into account all of the branded products rather than the advertised products. So not even the same category, but across all categories in that brand. So that's why we need standards so that things like that don't happen anymore. And we can make rational decisions when it comes to the investment, because to your point, €1 can just be invested once. So, and I also think it's kind of like is a natural step in the evolution of retail media. So we are not at that point where ROAS is 16 and we accept it. I think we are a lot more savvy now. So it just feels like, the natural next step when it comes to retail media.
I think my fellow panelists have covered it off well, but I guess I started working in a retail media environment kind of around 10 years ago. And when I first moved into retail media from a traditional media environment, actually a lot of businesses that were previously working with network media agencies, for example, actually didn't. They were like, wow, so brands are spending money directly with the retailer in online, in store. And kind of there's a huge gap there in terms of how they're doing that. How can we kind of be part of that? And I think that's kind of where we got to now in terms of the last few years in defining standards, is that each stakeholder needs to be able to understand whether that's the brand, the retailer, the agency, how they can access inventory, but also how they can measure, monitor, and again, as it's been talked about, it's the key to growth. Yeah, so that's kind of that's it.
Yeah, maybe I would add just one point, because we don't maybe with lots of players that were involved in this standardization and measurement standards. I think it's important to note that it's a big work. So thank you, Yara, in IAB Europe. It started early in January this year. And if the work was done, I think 3 years ago, I don't think retailers or ad tech companies, by the way, were able to share those type of standards. So the market is still not that mature, as our host was talking about it a bit earlier. But now I think it's the time to regroup together, to do some work together, to be able to challenge the data, to share more. Obviously, all retailers have different stories in different industries. You are not speaking and measuring exactly the same when you are doing some, consumer electronics or food or flash sales, which last only 7 days and not with a full catalog of products available every time. So we still need to keep in mind those differences. The shoppers are not paid the same on different retailer websites. But still, at the end, we need to have comparable figures. But with the intelligence of the agency or the advertiser, just thinking about the back, what is in the back of the shopper in the shopper journey.
Thank you. One of the next iterations of work, and that's a question for you, we're going to be doing is in-store, right? And we at the IAB believe that in-store is absolutely part of the retail media mix, but it remains one of, if traditional retail media, as we understand it, on-site and off-site is the wild, wild west, in-store is, I don't know.
Where do we start?
Exactly. So where do you think we would start with in-store?
It's I guess from an IAB perspective, we'd start with the digital in-store elements. So kind of digital screens, hand scanners, digital audio, just in terms of being at a transition from digital online and offsite standards to in-store. That's kind of where we would go. But yeah, it's kind of it's a huge kind of challenge, the store environment. I guess for grocers in kind of Europe, looking at grocery retail, the audience is still very much kind of 80% of the audience is in store. I mean, I was speaking to retailers actually just in Italy recently, and only 3-4% of their sales are online. So I guess we've got to very quickly get to the point of how we look at in-store standards. I think what we're seeing is in some markets, in some parts of Europe, in-store is similar to digital out of home, certainly in terms of digital signage, digital screens. However, if we can kind of bridge the gap between online metrics and measurement and in-store kind of activation metrics and measurement, then I think we're kind of getting closer to the point of actually being able to create standards which are omni-channel. I think that's really important.
Thanks for that. So omni-channel is a word that gets thrown around a lot. From a brand and agency perspective, what do you think is the minimum viable to really be able to talk about omni-channel?
Yeah, so I think omnichannel is anyway a lot more complex. So I think for me, the biggest point is a lot about the different budgets. So what we're now trying to do is sit together with retailers it's very new. So I'm also encouraging together with our retailers to really discuss and talk about what is possible, because there is no best way forward at the moment. So there's not a written handbook on how actually we should go into that. And I think it is now sometimes complex with some retailers where sometimes we have examples where we have 6 different pots of money where we need to spend it. And in the end, I think it's all interlinked. So in the end, it's quite hard to see, for example, online separately from offline, or from the promotions or everything that there is also in store. So I think for now, what we are doing then as an advertiser is really trying to sit together with our agency, with Mindshare, and with our retailers in that triangle, like, okay, how can we approach this best, and what is the best way how we can move this forward? Because with all the conversations I had so far, I don't think there's a golden rule on how to approach it yet. And I think it's good that we need to explore together, same with the standardization and with the other metrics, that we need to have the discussion and an open thing about what we expect from each other. And I think that's now how we approach it. But to really give a clear answer on what is the best there, I think that's very hard.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to that conversation on marginal gains, right? Like, we are talking about standards now in digital. So just jumping from that to omnichannel standards seems a bit like a big jump.
Yes.
So I feel like, let's do digital. Let's make sure everyone agrees on a common set of standards. Let's do in-store. Let's make sure that everyone has the measurement in place. Let's make sure that we have the standards in place for in-store. And maybe 2025, talk omnichannel.
Okay, thank you for saying that. Great. So our roadmap makes sense. We're not, skimming anyone here. So with all of that, there's a lot of things that are accepted programmatically that you just have to do, whether it's SIVT or third-party verification, that are not necessarily part of the retail media common practice, let's say. When do you think those should be adopted, and which of those are table stakes for you as an agency?
So I think that, retail media is not anymore just search placements, right? We talk about connected TV, we talk about connected digital out of home, we talk about in-store. So I think if retail media is growing up and becoming media, then it should be held to the same standards as, let's call it, traditional media. So as an agency, if I have an online video on a retailer's website and I look at that viewability rate, and then I have an online video running through a programmatic network and I look at that viewability, I want to make sure that I'm looking at the same metric and I can make rational investment decisions for my clients. So I believe that if retail media, if we have the expectations for brands to move money from traditional media channels into retail media, then we should offer the same measurement, the same standards, right?
Yeah, I think maybe small addition to this, so fully aligned, because I think in the end it's part of the total media mix. So in the end, retail media is a part of that, and we set standards for all our media partners. And I think in the end, we will be doing, of course, the same for our retail media partners. I just think, and there are a lot of things with margins, with cost and resources that we of course need to talk about and set standards, like when is it feasible to have things live and when is it feasible to have things ready. But I think to have that conversation, and that's what we're doing here. That's why I think it's so good that we're here all together to have and start those conversations about what we need and how we did it. But I think in the end, it's part of the same media mix. So why should we set different standards for retail media versus traditional media account? Also because we need to compare them to each other.
Yeah, exactly. So I was reading an article in Adweek the other day, and it was saying that it's expected by the end of 2025, 5% of traditional TV spend to shift to retail in-store screens. So if that happens, then the retail in-store screens should also offer metrics on how the brand, is impacted by that advertising placement. So I think that with the spend shift, a lot of more focus is gonna be on the retail channels. And with that, a lot more expectation and demand on the brand side, on the agency side. So hopefully retailers are just gonna follow suit,
Yeah, I agree. I think we are in a way where retailers will go more and more to be more publishers, but with a strong differentiator, which is their data, their specific inventory, but also a good brand equity with shoppers. Retailers' website and apps are very, brand safe, are in a very good context for brands and shoppers. So obviously we need to, as retailers, to go more and more to the lights as publisher. But it is not, it's not coming from one movement. We need to iterate to understand how technology works. Maybe some external technologies. If we are taking the marketing digital world, there are some players which are, settled in the market, which is good. On the media side, but sometimes they do not fully understand the retail media ecosystem. So it's more discussions. I think it's happening right now. It has already started. We are using the technology that enables, for example, to have third-party verification tools. But not all of the retailers we are working with are able to make it happen on their website. So it's just finding the good time to do so. We are also helping retailers that are starting their retail media journey, and for them, obviously, it's not the first point in their to-do list of retail media. They just need to be organized first to know how to separate trade and retail media. They are still at this type of questions, and for maybe the more mature one, it's more the question right now with the brands and the agencies with which we are working. So I think it's a subject for this year, maybe before in-store a bit, but yeah, it was not possible also before, I guess, because of the lack of discussions together and the maturity. There's different steps in the retail media journey of a retailer, and now the most mature one, I think, are ready to do so.
I know Unilever is doing a lot of work on brand salience, right? On going beyond the typical ROAS metrics. Again, not all brands are there, not all retailers can deliver that, but can you talk widely about what you're seeing there and eventually, how can it trickle down?
Yes, I think the interesting part, we have a lot of conversation now with retailers where they say, okay, don't you want to build higher up in the funnel, more about brand awareness campaigns? And I think the thing that is missing a little bit now is that we're asking, okay, but can you show the brand impact on brand recall or brand salience, etc.? I think for now that is missing, but I think with the retailers that are the furthest, we're having those conversations now and we're saying, okay, we're open to it. And if you want to, in the end, get money from piece of the pie from the online video or from TV, we do need to have similar metrics. And if we then can compare and see that, for example, the impact of brand awareness campaign at retailers is higher than it is, for example, on TVC, yeah, then there's no reason why we wouldn't change part of our budget into retailers. So I think it's in the end working together and also finding out, okay, what do we expect and what do we want to see to be able to make those decisions? But I think on a positive note, I think a lot of those conversations are now happening, definitely in the Benelux here. So I think we're working together a lot with our top retailers and our strategic ones to start setting the standard on this. And if we see results, we will also be able to step more into that. But for now, it's very conversion focused. I think also if you look, of course, at the IBA and where we're looking at, it's all about conversion and it's all about sales, which is logical, I think. But I think if we want to make the next step, and then I maybe already a little bit in advance, but if we're going to 2024, 2025 later on, that will maybe play a crucial role also if we want to hit that 35% growth mark in the end.
Yeah, I'll touch upon that. I think that kind of retailers have a big advantage already, that the kind of metrics that can be gained from the store or from kind of an online proposition is they're already kind of brand metrics that come into play. So kind of frequency is key for kind of raising brand awareness. And shoppers on average in Europe spend around 41 minutes inside of a store and actually over that on kind of line. So already you can start to kind of that repetition of brand media will drive frequency and therefore drive brand awareness. So retailers are already sitting on those assets that are kind of capable of driving those kind of awareness metrics. And I guess kind of where we can implement technologies, be it online, on-site, off-site, in-store, that are going to help with those brand metrics, be it kind of measurement of sensors in store, kind of computer vision that can look at passers-by in terms of digital media, that's all going to help kind of create that kind of brand awareness metrics as well.
So going back to our roadmap, I'm going to do a self-serving plug here and ask a live poll. We're going to have standards for display on-site formats. Not sexy work, has to be done. It'll be released in June. After that, there's certification coming, there's in-store coming. You guys know that. But there's a spot for something else. I think you're all on our committee, you know what we're thinking. But if you had a vote, what would you pick? What do you think is most important?
I think brand saliency, looking at brand, yeah, is possibly quite key.
Interesting. I'm going to go the other way. I think that when we talk about retail media, we talk a lot about media. And if you look at all of the metrics that we have in the standards, they are mostly media metrics, which I think is fair enough. But retailers also sit on a lot of shopper data. So, you know, and they also sit on inventory data, and they also sit on profitability data. So if we would have access to that data and use that as a trigger for how we plan the media, I think that's when we really unlock the power of media. So as a brand, if I know that for a product, I have like 5,000 units sitting in the warehouse, then I want to prioritize that product. And apart from a very few select retailers that offer access to those insights, they are still very much a black box. So for me, if we can bring those retail insights into retail media, you know, that would be quite useful.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's see, live poll here.
Insights are always been maybe the latest point to discuss on retail media, but it is the backbone of the strategy. And of course, it needs some some work to be done on the retailer side about the data, about usage of data lake, segmentation, etc., which is not done at all for some of the retailers. So please keep in mind that it's not as easy as expected. But some of them, Carrefour, for example, is doing a good first job on this one to make this data accessible in terms of store data, shopper data, website traffic data, etc. I think we can do more, even with some first steps, and connect really the insight to the audience and to the action plans. Is still something to be done, I think, on the market. And obviously, there are some steps before, but this one for me is a clear working group that can be created, an insight, and connection insight to audience and targeting at the end.
Oh, that's like 3 working groups in one. I don't know, but sure.
I guess you can regroup a bit to see how you work.
It's omni-channel.
Great. See you in 2028.
Yeah, I think I will go also for a little bit of different approach. I think there's more my commercial background then as well. But for me, the incrementality part is really a crucial one. So I would like to have a bit of a further deep dive altogether on that one, because I think, and I hope in the end, I saw something also about separating sort of more the sales and the retail media part. I don't really think in the end that it can be fully separated, even though we might want to. I think the value of combining the sales data together with our retail media, that's where we're really going to make impact, I think. And ROAS on itself, without seeing incrementality on overall sales, doesn't really say too much. So I think in the end, there I would like to see together, okay, where can we find that sort of, because for example, our agencies don't have access now to the sales data, but they do need to optimize our campaign. So how can they improve on incrementality if they don't have that data? So there's a few things that I would like to discuss on that topic as well. And I think that's something where our brands and we as a commercial company are really aiming for as well.
So you're saying incrementality. You want to do audience and insights. You're saying audience insights and incrementality. And then you're saying brand salience.
They've switched my mind.
Okay.
I'm saying audience and insights.
Some work to do, I think.
Okay, Marie-Claire.
And yes, maybe one last point about incrementality. We will talk about it in French tomorrow if you want in Paris. Vaillance Digital, so kind
Are
of
you flying back tonight, or then I can jump on?
But I think it's clearly a clear point in our different roadmaps, from agencies to brands and retailers. It's not an easy topic either, because to do some incrementality in over media, you need lots of shoppers that are exposed to your message and then compare what is comparable in terms of access. So I think it's a big work on the incrementality. Definitely, we should go in this way. And it's not easy to pass, but at least we have the data to make it available. Maybe there will be some criteria. You cannot do some incrementality if you are spending €1,000 on some shoppers. It's not possible. You will not measure anything at the end, or it will not be a robust type of methodology. So there are some prerequisites, but I think we should list those prerequisites and then define what is incrementality and how we can bring it to life.
Really agree with you. Thank you for that. Thank you. And I think the next time, well, I'll let Jason.
We got a question.
Oh, we got a question. Great.
So I'm just going to read this one out.
So we sometimes see the trading deals with big retailers become a blocker from agencies demanding standard improvements. Do you think this is changing, and how do we overcome this when delicate relationships are in play and media is secondary to the main revenue streams?
Shall I take this one?
Go, Larissa.
Yeah, we see that a lot. We see that a lot. So when we do what we call retail prioritization, so we often look at, okay, how big is that retailer? What's the headroom for growth? And how mature is that retailer? So we kind of like guide ourselves by that. And then we have the conversations with the brands and they're like, yeah, this is all fine, but actually I have a deal with this retailer to spend 5 million this year. So I understand it's not a priority, but you have to make it a priority. So there is a bit of tension there. But what we see happening more and more is us being brought at the same table. So, when the big JBPs happen between the brand, the retailer, and the agency is also part of that conversation. And obviously that helps a lot because we can set the expectations on our side and we can also set the expectations on the client side, right, on what to expect. We understand that, business requirements are business requirements. We can't shy away from them. So instead of hiding our head in the sand, we just need to face it. And we just need to be part of the conversation from the get-go. It'd be good to see what Casper's opinion is as the brand lead.
Yeah, no, so I think we will always ask also from our side for optimized performance. I mean, that's in the end also we're Unilever for. So, but I think what we're doing is exactly this. So we're sitting together with our strategic partner, key retailers, and our media agency, so Mindshare, and us, to really have that open discussion about now also about commercial parts, about retail media, but also about data access. So I think having that conversation in that triangle is really helping us to move forward in a strategic way. I think in the end, and that's maybe also a little bit part of the question, that on the other side, there is also a big retailer discussion. So that makes it sometimes complex because I'm also getting conversations and deal things input from our, of course, from our trade deal. But I think in the end, because we say that the retail relationship is in the end more important, but in the end, if you look at margins and if this is continuing to grow that way, retail media might even be more important for retailers than their actual trade businesses. And looking at Amazon and some other retailers, it already is. So I think in the end, we do have quite some say on that as well from our side on retail media. And I think having that conversation all together strategically will help us a lot to move forward in this ever dynamic environment.
Was there any other questions? Well, I guess not online. In person, anyone has a question?
Can I just
We have time.
Thank you. So of course, I think it's really great to work on all this measurement. I think we're struggling with that a lot in prioritizing. However, talking about the marketing mix in total, I also see the risk of better and stronger measurement. So maybe connected to the hype and the disillusionment, so to say. I get more and more questions from the brand. Why would I invest if the ROAS is not high enough? Why would I invest if the incrementality is not high enough? And they are comparing to traditional media, where we also don't have this measurement even in place, but they're just trusting that it's the right thing to do. So it's very hard to compete with that, just because they don't have the same level of measurement. So how do you think we can overcome this and still unlock enough investment into retail media to indeed keep on growing it?
Yeah, it's maybe strange to answer my own company, but but I think that's exactly why we want to have those standards also in place, because we're comparing now apples to pears, and that's exactly the problem. So our marketing teams, our brands, they are comparing. Now, one good example is, for example, out of home and digital out of home. So in the Netherlands, quite some retailers have now been are part of BRO, so it's called buitenreclameonderzoek, which is actually measuring on the same way as we do traditional out of home. So in that way, we can actually compare peers to peers. And if then the price for digital out of home is 30% higher, there needs to be an impact that actually makes it clear that it's worth to invest 30% more. And then we can actually make a data-driven decision. And I think those developments are what we need to make those decisions more and more. I don't know if anybody else has a different view on that, but I think that's one of the important things why we're having those standards.
I will be very quick. I think it's also about setting expectations on the client side, on the brand side, and on the retailer side. So, as a brand, if you're doing, online video on a retailer website and you're looking at the return on ad spend, that's not going to be great, because you're looking at the upper funnel and you're measuring it against the lower funnel metric. So I think it's about correlating the business objective that you have with the media KPI. And that's why it's important to have standards, because if we say, okay, for online video, we look at new to brand, then that makes sense. If for online video, we keep on looking at CPCs and ROAS, then yeah, it's not going to be successful. But it's about, connecting the dots between upper funnel objectives with upper funnel media KPIs and lower funnel objectives with lower media KPIs.
Maybe a good point. You can ask your media vendors to share performance data if they are able to. Not all of them are able to, but I guess trying to compare also on performance, if your objective is performance, it could be a key driver. If retailers are going in the publisher way, let's say, publisher may need also to go on the more performance-driven way. I don't think it's that developed yet today on the market, but there are actors or some actors that are able to share this type of data. And it could be good to compare apples to apples, but also on the publisher side.
I think I was just going to add to the point around transparency, because I can think what you're saying is by having these standards in place, having more measurement, more standards and output effectively, is that it could show a kind of negative on ROAS, on impact of sales. But I think that a brand would, Casper, and hopefully could vouch for that, is that the transparency to begin with is the most important thing here. And then with that transparency, you're able to compare, again, pairs to pairs in Casper's example. So I think, yeah, kind of having that transparency from the beginning kind of gives a foundation for kind of what is then next. Once you have the foundation, how can I then improve, optimize, and make that performance better? Or how can I add additional metrics to that, such as brand, alongside kind of driving sales? So can I do more? Yeah.
So I think we're on time, sorry. But thank you so much for all of your contribution. I left knowing that we have a full roadmap till 2028. So thank you for that. I really appreciate all the insights. And yeah, I think I'll let Jason introduce our next